G'day. Today we're going to be going over a forensics task that I've created and I've put up on my GitHub page. And I'll also be going through and showing you how to set up the task itself. So if you wanted to do something and create a forensics task or do some testing, you'll be able to have the tool set and ability to be able to create your own virtual machine and then go ahead and create a task and do some testing. That is something that I do for when I need to solve a task or just if I'm interested in something in general. So up here on the screen, we can see this is my GitHub page. So you can find that at cybercobed.github.io. And then the task that we're going to be looking at today is in here. So we're going to prove an employee accessed inappropriate content. But first I want to go back and I'll take you through how to create this scenario so you can do this for yourself or for people in your organization that you want to train up. So first thing you're going to need is a virtualization software, so you're able to install the virtual machines. What I use VMware Workstation Pro. It's a paid version, but you can get a free version of VMware, and that's the VMware player. You can also use VirtualBox as well. I won't be going through that in this video, but that is an option. So I'm based in Australia. I'm going to click on here, take you through their website, and then you can click on here and download now. It'll give you the option to download for Windows or for Linux. So I'm on a Windows 64-bit operating system. You can download here and install that. I'm not going to go through that process, but that's what you can do there. Next up, we need to get a virtual machine up and running within VMware Player, where there's a few places you can get those. Unix operating systems are a lot easier to get your hands on. Windows does offer evaluation versions that kind of last for 90 days, but you can keep using them after the 90 days, and they're perfect for what we're going to be using for testing. So to find that, let's go ahead and search for Windows Edge ISO. As we can see here, virtual machines, Microsoft Edge Developer. This is what we want. So Microsoft releases these for the purpose of testing IE 11 and Microsoft Edge Legacy, and they chuck them on a Windows 10 virtual machine. These expire after 90 days, but when you install it on VMware Player, you'll be able to take a snapshot, and then once your 90 days is up, you can just go back to the start of the snapshot and get that. So depending on operating system or what you want to run it on, so see here we can actually run one in VirtualBox, but click on VMware Player, this will download. I've already downloaded this, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how to install it on VMware Player. So if you need that to download, pause this video and then come back. So here, this is what VMware Player looks like. It has a home screen. I already have one open up, but when you download that Edge version, it actually gives it to you in a format that you can put straight into VMware Player. So this little icon here is for VMware files, and a VMDK is usually associated with VirtualBox, but we're able to, because of the OVF, we're actually able to open this up in both virtualization environments, which is really nice. So it's easy enough to go ahead and double click it. We can rename this to test machine, and it's telling what path it's going to be storing it in. So all of it's going to give the virtual machine some hard drive space and memory. Those are stored in separate files, but they're all stored within that file directory at cyberdesi VMware test and test machine. So let's go ahead and import. This will take a little while. All right, now that we have our test machine up here, the first thing we're going to want to do is just right click on it and go settings. And then as you can see here, so this is what's assigned to the virtual machine itself. So the hard disk has been assigned 40 gigabytes, has two processors, which isn't too important because virtual machines generally don't run how a normal hardware operating system would run on hardware. but we are assigned 4 gigabyte of memory. So generally you can get away with 2 gigabyte, which is recommended. I'm not going to change it now because I'm not trying to run multiple VMs for this task. But one thing that we do need to add is if we click on add, we need the USB controller. So this will allow us to plug in our external drive that will be part of the scenario that we're trying to create. So I'm going to click finish here. It's added the USB controller. I'm going to go OK. So I've got a USB drive already plugged in, and this is on my host system, so not the virtual machine. As we can see, there's some Linux commands, forensics, Linux cheat sheet. We're going to open up and see the effect of those in Windows 10 once we have our virtual machine powered up and running. And then this will move into the scenario, which I'll switch to another VM for that. But this is where we're going to head towards. So I'm going to close that. I'm going to power on this virtual machine. So it'll start up. See, it's Windows. So there we go. It's up and running. That didn't take too long. Click on this, and we're an IE user. So that's important to remember. And this is going to be part of the task in the end. But it's asking for a password. So if we go back to Windows, well, it was Windows Edge ISO from where we downloaded it from. And we look down here, the password to your VM is password with a capital P, a 0 and an exclamation mark. So that's good to remember. So I'm just going to type that in. If your cursor disappears within a VM, also you can press Control and Alt at the same time, and that'll escape your cursor back to here. I'm just going to go to full screen mode on this monitor. This just gives you background information to the VM. It's a Windows 10 Enterprise evaluation, tells you about your license and your password here. So you can change your background, that's fine. This is just an intro one. What we can do though is we can take a snapshot. So a snapshot will take an instance of time of where this is at. So we can take a snapshot and it'll just be easier to show you. So snapshot one, let's just put a description, just signed in. And then we'll put password is, just in case we forget and we can't get back in, we can't remember where we get it from. So let's take a snapshot, nice and quick, cool. Oh, and it's updating. Convenient. All right, so unexpected, but Windows always updates and then restarts at the most inconvenient times. So let's go back in. We'll see. It looks like it's created a snapshot just before it restarted. So I'm going to copy this and then I'm going to delete the snapshot. So these snapshots are also saved in that directory from when we first installed the VM. So for me, it'll be d/cyberdesi/vmware/test machine. So let's take another snapshot. Let's give it the description again. Take the snapshot. Hope that Microsoft doesn't restart on us. And then let's say I want to create a new text document. Let's call this malware. So say I wanted to do some malware testing. Create the malware.txt. I put bad code is inside here. And then I managed to crypto lock my computer because this turns out to be malware and it completely wrecks my computer. What we can now do, because we've taken a snapshot, is this is saying we are here. So everything that we've done after this snapshot is within this portion of this snapshot manager. So I know that I kind of messed up my computer here and I want to go back to a known good state. So it's kind of like a safe state. I can click on this, and by restoring the snapshot, the current state will be lost. Well, I'm locked out, so I could go restore it. This also works if I shut down the virtual machine. And this could simulate the corrupted virtual machine, or for, say if I had crypto locked it, I can just double click on this. By restoring this, it will return it to snapshot 1, and it should take me back to that desktop state that I was just in. So it takes a little while to restore it. And this UI here section will now be immediately after this snapshot is restored, and then time marches on and we now have a new state. I'm not sure about the free version. If you have the pro version, there is no limit to how many snapshots you can take as long as you have the space on your computer, because you've got to remember that each time you're taking it, it's taking a snapshot of your memory plus your hard drive at that state, and stores it, and that builds up over time. Generally, if I'm doing projects, so if when I was doing my OSCP, I had 3 snapshot states, and I would constantly rotate through those snapshot states. That is not a viable backup method, but it does save for corruption for when it does eventually happen when you're working with virtual machines. Okay, so now let's move on. I have the USB plugged into my computer at the moment, so I'm going to remove that. And then I'm going to plug it back in, and it should give me the option. So because we added the USB controller to this virtual machine, it's now asking me whether I want to connect it to my host, which is where it was before, or I can now connect it to a virtual machine. So it'll connect it to a virtual machine of any virtual machine that's powered on. So what do I mean by that? I'm going to have to go back and show this again now, but I need to exit full screen mode. So I can see on my computer, I have a fair few VMs here, but I only have 2 powered on. One's in a pause state, and you'll notice that it didn't notice that VM. So it's only trying to connect to powered on virtual machines. So if I go back, unplug my USB, plug it back in, select connect to virtual machine. You can also select remember your choice and do not ask again. I generally like to pick which one I'm doing, so because I don't generally plug in USBs that often while I'm using VMs. So I always leave it as an option unticked, but I want to put it onto the test machine. Okay. All right. So now it's not being recognized. Oh man. All right. Let us try one more USB. Let's switch back to the test machine because it seems like I'm having issues either way. All right, it's pulling with the drive, but it looks like it's connected. So could have been the drives before. All right, and this must have been the one that I actually used for this thing. So what I've just done there, I've taken out some of the video, but I was plugging in a few USBs, and the virtual machine that I was using just did not like it. I am assuming that the issue that I'm having is I don't have the updates or updated driver either through Windows security or just the driver updates themselves for the USBs that I was trying to use. They did work on my host system, so that's fully updated. It did not work on these VMs. So I'm just going to right click here. Create a text document called test1.text. Let's say test2.text. Let's just open these. So when you open files in Windows, there's a few artifacts that are dropped. So whenever you execute something, and by execute I mean double clicking, there's a link file created. There's also some files created in the Windows recent items, which is a registry key. So registry keys are pretty much the, I guess, the note takers for Windows operating systems. So whenever you're doing something and Windows wants to try and remember what the user was doing, it will store it in the registry keys. And it stores them in there for system settings, software settings, security settings, and then each user as well has their own settings that are set within the registry keys. Awesome. Thanks, WinZip. Okay, so let's check what was in here. I'm fairly certain these are the artifacts that you download from my GitHub page. Close, go away. Let's I think it was infected. Yeah. Nope, this was something different. Cool. All right, so let's go back to this PC and we'll open up a new thing. So obviously there, when I went back to this PC, I didn't have it. It's in the quick access. So recent files here, we can see that I've accessed artifacts.7zip, test and text, and it's telling me that it's LXRE. So from here, I'm going to unplug the USB and close this and see if it still retained the Lexar name. No. So as we can see here, while it was plugged in, it took the Lexar, but now it just has a path. If these were in folders, it would have the folder here. It'd have, in the example that we give in the task, it has e:\pawn, and then it has the files that are there. If we try and access these, the system can't find it because the USB is not plugged in. And this is where we get to with this task now. So from here, what I did was I just took the Rickroll videos from YouTube and renamed them a whole bunch of times, chucked them on a USB, plugged it in, played all of them, and then I unplugged the USB and I left it in the recent items file. So this is where we're at the start of the task. So if I close this down and I go back to my task, this is the scenario. So a manager of an employee has come to you. They have a pool of laptops that get given out, and on one of the laptops that an employee recently got, he noticed in his recent items that you can see here, there's a whole bunch of very suspect looking videos and how they're named. And then they're located on the E drive /pawn. And on this computer in particular, there's only a C drive. So it's the same VM that I'm currently using is installed on the laptop is how this works. The laptops are all shared commonly, and there's a list of people who regularly access those laptops, and you'll get given a name with dates. So the managers come to you and said, hey, we think there's some inappropriate content. Can you please check that the dates for when this was accessed? Because as you can see here, there's no dates associated with this. So it's up to us as the forensics analysts to try and figure out when these were accessed so management can then kind of blame someone or go and retrain them, because it goes against corporate policy of appropriate use for these laptops. So yeah, we're given the task and then here are the files. So I'm going to download these files while we're going. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through just how we get those files. So what we're going to do here is the first thing you're going to need is a program called FTK Imager. Now, FTK Imager is a pretty great tool to do forensic analysis with. What it also can do is it can dump the registry hives and the user registry files that we need to do the forensic analysis for this task. So simple enough to go to Google, type in FTK Imager. It's a program made by Access Data. Once again, you can get a paid version of this, which will offer you a lot more features, but for what we need, we only need to download the version and not use the product key, and we can use the free features. So you'd click download now here, it'll download, and then you can install it. If you want to go ahead and do that and stop the video and then come back. All right, so welcome back. What we're going to do here is I'm going to flick over to my inappropriate content VM. So this is the VM I used to create this task. It is exactly the same as the last VM. I'm just a bit further ahead and I have stuff installed on here. So you've now downloaded the Access Data FTK imager. Just double click on that and run it. It needs to run as administrator because it's going to be accessing some registry hives while the system's live and saving those for you. And then what we want to do is we want to create a new file and let's just call it evidence. Cool, and that's just on our desktop. So to use FTK Imager for this task, we're going to click on File and then go Obtain Protected Files. Down here with the options, we want to tick Password Recovery and All Registry Files. And then we want to browse and we're going to put this in our evidence folder that we just created. And then click OK. Does a whole bunch of stuff. Pretty much takes the registry hives. You can see there it's scan the MST, which I'll cover off later in another forensics task because that's pretty interesting. But that's all we needed FTK Imager for, was just to gain those files. So these are all the standard registry hives that exist on Windows systems. And these exist within the C Windows System32 config folder. And like I was saying before, they're pretty much the setting repository for everything that Windows does. There's been a lot of research into this for forensics and they're not very well organized. And even now, some of the keys aren't fully understood. And if we go into here, so users, so there's a default user and the IE user. So remember when we logged in, we were the IE user. Within here is the ntuser.dat file. Now this file is the when you log in as a user, this registry hive gets loaded, and then anything that the user does, so say recent files that was opened by the user, is stored in the ntuser.dat file. Now, so this is really important because it can be used to attribute certain actions. So say if you had a network with a whole bunch of users and they each had their own profile, each one of those users will have an ntuser.dat file. So if you wanted to prove a certain user or a certain user profile did something, then you may be able to find evidence within this file. So excellent. So we've put all that. That's great. And this now leads us up to the task. So with the task, the first thing we're going to need is to plan the task. So we've been given some information that a user's been using a dodgy website. We've been given that screenshot or had it explained to us that there seems to be some suspicious stuff in the recent items in Windows. So I guess what we're going to need to do is first we have a little bit of background knowledge and we're like, okay, cool. Let's look in the registry for this kind of thing because we know that all the settings are set there. And then to view the registry, what we want to use is a tool called Registry Explorer. So this exists in a database of a multitude of tools and it's made by Eric Zimmerman. This guy has put out so many tools that are all free to use and can help you pretty much do whatever you need to do in forensics. And if you have an idea and you submit it to him, more than likely he's going to create a tool. The best part is most of his tools are GUI based, so they're super easy to use. They still can be used in command line, and then they can be put into other tools. So if you're creating your own tool, they can use there. And yeah, it's pretty amazing some of the stuff this guy's done. So the one that we want to use is Registry Explorer. So it's a GUI interface for, as it says here, Registry Viewer searching, multi-hive support, plugins and more. Handles locked files. This is perfect. So click on this. This will download Registry Explorer in a zip file. I've already downloaded it and you should be able to use it. So should be on here. Yeah, Registry Explorer. Cool. So as you can see, there's a command line. I'm going to be using the GUI. GUI's a lot bigger, but it's nice and easy to use. So now that we have the tool that we're going to use and we have the evidence that was given to us, or if we were the forensic analyst acquiring it, we have now acquired it. What we want to go ahead and do is we now want to do just some open source research on potentially what we're going to do. So this is generally how I approach tasks. If I have no idea what I'm doing, is I just start with Google and I start Googling keywords of what I think things might be. So let's Google Windows recent files registry key. Let's see what comes up. So, what do we want to look for? So Neosoft is another company that's pretty good. I usually go with them. They have some tools themselves that can like extract things and stuff. So recent files view. This is looking promising. Nothing for a quick skim. So let's go back and keep looking. Maybe this one, Windows Central. There's like, looks like a key here. Quick scroll down. So it shows you how to disable recent jump lists using registry. Like I was saying before, so jump list is the artifact that it'll store when you're trying to open a program, and it creates a file in a jump list that kind of tells you what's recently open. There's another one, so we're going to look at this key. So the key is the OpenSave MRU. So it's HK current user. The HK current user is the user that was currently logged on. So since we know that that was the IA user, let's go ahead and load that Hive. So it's brought us right here, enter user.dat. Do you want to replay transition logs? Let's go no. It's a dirty Hive. There's some background to that, but I'm not going to go into that now. So what was it? It was HK. Let's snap this into place. So current user, software, Microsoft Windows, current version, Explorer. So software, Microsoft, Windows, current version, and then Explorer, and then the COM DLG 32. And then it's talking about the OpenSave. Just scroll down here. So it looks like this is all, it's based on my computer. Stuff that's in my downloads file or desktop file. Doesn't look like it's got anything to do with kind of like external drives being plugged in. So good guess, but doesn't look like we're quite there with this one. So let's keep looking. Let's have a look at this one. So this is the same we just looked at. Last visited MRU, so let's check that too. No. Also, so the benefit with Registry Explorer is that it's giving us times. If you looked at this in just the native Windows Reg Explorer, you actually won't get any of these times because it's collating information across the key and digging through other keys to get this kind of information. This is the benefit of using this kind of program. Okay, so where to go from here? So let's keep looking. So HKCU, Software, Microsoft Windows, current version, Explorer, recent docs. Okay, that could be promising. So let's look at that. Recent docs. And here we go. So we know from the task itself, if we go back here and have a look, Funtime Tonkas, Sexy Silhouette, Kinky Cucumbers, Missionary, Hardcore Pineapples. So that's stuff we're looking for. Let's go back into the inappropriate content, and what do we have? Funtime Tonkas, Sexy Silhouette, Kinky Cucumbers, Missionary, Hardcore Pineapples. This is exactly what we want. So just through some Google searches, and I didn't kind of read my solution for what I did before. I just kind of Googled and then found this kind of stuff. And using that approach, I found this. So here we've got the target name, the link name. What else we have here is the USB drive E that was plugged in. So we can see here on 2019 in December on the 21st at 9:10. It will be important to note what time the computer is in, because this will be important on if you're in a different geographical location or what it's stored in. By default, this should be UTC within the registry. I'm not going to say by default, but this is UTC here. And so at 9:10, we can see that my mistake, not the USB drive. But we can see the USB drive being plugged in. So here it is again. There's all this other stuff. But let's see if we can link up a time for what we're actually looking for. So we know that this one was played at 2019, 12th, 21st at 9:12. Okay, so that gives us a time. So from here, what we're going to need to look at is the list that was given to us for the users that were logged in. So I'm going to go back to my write-up. And if I go all the way to the bottom, so this is the laptop loan history that's part of the task. So date from to, and these are the dates that were loaned out to people. So we've got Jonesy Jones, Caroline McDowell, Alyssa Stiles, Navid Flied, and Taj Kakwan. So noting from how this task is set up, we can kind of guess that Taj is the one that found it and then notified the manager of the stuff in the recent files history. Now, Navid Flight only had it for a day. Potentially he loaned that out and then did not give it back. But Alyssa Stiles handed it back on the 20th of December. So we, like setting times aside, we know that Navid Flight got this. These dates and times are also in UTC. So because we kind of ignored it for this task, but this will be important if you're pulling data and you see, you need to know what time zones you're in. And there's a separate forensics task to check that, which I'll cover off on in a different video. But for the purpose of this task, we've now found Navid Flight was the one looking up inappropriate content. We can write this up and take it back to our manager. All right, so that covers off my first forensics task. I hope this was helpful in how to create a task yourself, where to get certain resources, and then how to go through the task and pull data, analyze, and just the thought process on how to get to where we need to when we get given a task. Happy to take questions. If you have any, try and hit me up on Reddit, and I now have a Twitter handle, which I'll have up on my GitHub page. And if you've got any suggestions or any ideas for things that you want to see in forensics that your manager may be asking for, I'm more than happy to take them, and I will try and get around to them best I can. Thanks for listening.